All right. How's it going, everybody? This is Aaron the Pedantic, and I am going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but I've been trying to do short videos, and this is not going to be a short video. This is very niche here. This is going to be for people that maybe are interested. They're wondering what is Dungeon Crawl Classics. At the same time, they don't want to just be sold the good points or the bad points. They want to just have somebody run them through the book. Maybe they just want to listen to this while they're doing something else, and then they want to mine ideas from it. This is kind of what I'm putting this out for. So very small audience here, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the entire rule book of Dungeon Crawl Classics, not reading the whole thing, but basically highlighting what I think is important and what you can get from it. So first thing you are going to see if you are watching is the very lovely artwork. So this is artwork that is kind of done in the kind of I would say like an elevated old school aesthetic. So a lot of the old school stuff, if you look at it, it is usually, people in these various action poses and things like that. But at the same time, it's also very, how should I say, very grounded in like what you're usually seeing. This has like details all over the place. And that's kind of, it's really cool. I love the artwork in these books. Most of it that you're going to see is black and white though. So those are just some color works. This is a little bit more of what you're going to be in for. So, and they have very talented artists that they use. I love the orc army here. All right, so we have credits, we have backers, we got pictures of the road crew. They have done at least 7 printings now, I believe. 7 editions, I guess. Well, yeah, it's printings. Okay, so one of the things that you're going to notice whenever you look at the rule book is that spells take up a lot of it. So spells... let's see. Okay. Looks like it starts on... See, that's about cleric spells. All right, so 127. And then, like, the spells kind of end on 301. Well, actually, that's just the level 5 spells where they start. So, there's a lot of fucking spells in this thing. The rules are very minimalistic in a lot of ways, but it is a structure that is very easy to run games on. It also has enough moving parts for players to make it interesting for them. And I'm going to highlight, just how all that works. So the first thing that you have is basically this kind of creed. So it's kind of interesting. It gives you an idea of like what their purpose is. It's also very hyperbolic, which I can appreciate for hilarity's sake. So it says, "Abandon all presumptions, ye who enter here. Turn the pages of this tome only should you meet these qualifications." Funny thing is, I did not meet the qualifications whenever I first got into DCC. "That you are a fantasy enthusiast of imaginative mind, familiar with the customs of role-playing, understanding the history and significance of the elder gods Gygax and Arneson and their cohorts Bledsaw, Holmes, Kask, Kuntz, Menser, and Moldve, and knowledgeable of the role of judge and the practice of adventurer." So the judge is the role. It's not dungeon master. It is partially because of, like legal terms. But judge is also a very good way of looking at it because it has a particular vibe. They expect you to be this impartial arbiter of the players' like actions and how it would impact the environment, and not a storyteller. And then, it has the practice of adventure. Or that you're in possession of implements of role-playing, namely graph paper and an assortment of polyhedrons, including but not limited to D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20. You're used to all those. So this is kind of one of the things that they do that's a little different. So they have the Zoki Dice, and this is something that you probably should have if you're going to play DCC, but if you don't, you can still play without. You just have to be kind of creative. Basically the stuff above the D20 is a little bit, well, actually no, they tell you how to simulate it with the conventional dice, so it's really not a big deal. But so they have a D3, a D5, a D7, a D14, a D16, a D24, a D30, and percentile. Now, some people basically don't like anything that's not these. In fact, a lot of them don't like, I think it's D10. It's either D10 or D12. I can't remember because it's not a platonic solid. Basically, the whole thing is that there are certain die types that are perfectly balanced and fair, and people were concerned that anything not like that is going to be unfair in some way. Now, from what I understand, and I've never had any problems rolling these, I've never had them come out bizarre. The hardest part about dealing with these is just finding them, but a lot of stores sell them. At least from what I've seen, a lot of game stores will sell them in this kind of weird pack. I can't remember what the company's called, but there is one company that's a pretty regular distributor for them. Or you can get them online. They're a little expensive, though, if you get them online. All right, so that you understand and appreciate certain visual hieroglyphs derived from denizens of the higher planes, whose deific identities among mortals are rendered in the common tongue: Otis, Easley, Rosloff, Holloway, Caldwell, Trampier, and D. So those are the kind of famous old school fantasy artists. That you should be appreciative of a life of fantastic adventure and escapades, and acknowledge that a dungeon crawl facilitates the judging of a game focused thereon, but in no way excludes broader adventures in the wilderness, at court, on the outer planes, or on the sea, air, or other places. So this is kind of a way of noting that this game is not just dungeon crawls. It doesn't have to be, and they don't expect it to be for a lot of people. And a lot of the adventures that they publish, because that is one of the cooler things about DCC, is all of the published adventures. They have over 100 of them, and they're all really good. And they have a wide assortment of environments. There are a lot of dungeons. There's a reason it's called Dungeon Crawl Classics. But at the same time, they also have a lot of wider adventures that encompass exploration of the wilderness and just all kinds of shit. So anybody that's going to say that DCC is just for people that do dungeon crawls and it's not for people that do intrigue or anything like that, it's incorrect. One of the things that people tend to say about one of the more famous might not be the right word, but celebrated adventure authors for DCC, Harley Stroh, is that you don't know that you're running a Harley Stroh adventure unless it's pretty fucking complicated. So it's there's usually going to be a lot of moving parts. It's not your basic dungeon crawl. All right. That you apprehend the fantasy pandect recorded in Appendix N with reverence and delight, acknowledging its defining place in creating this hobby. So for those that might not know, Appendix N, that is from the ye old D&D books, where basically Gygax put down what novels inspired the theme, the kind of implied world, basically what inspired D&D from a literature level. So I haven't read a whole lot of Appendix N. I've read some. I've read some Fafford in the Grey Mouser books. Well, as far as, I haven't read them all, but, it's good shit. It's really good shit. And it kind of gives you an idea of how they look at things. Probably the most important one to understand, like D&D magic, would probably be the Tales of the Dying Earth books, which I haven't read. I plan on reading, but I have heard enough about it to have like a rough idea of how it works. Anyway, that you are prepared to pledge with right hand upon your little brown books, call back to OD&D, that you shall uphold the honor and of the hobby or of role-playing to all comers, whether young or old. So anybody who wants to play, bring them in. Bring them into the fold. If these conditions are not met, then replace this book upon the shelf and flee with great celerity, for a bane befalls the heretical beholder of that which lies herein. Should you meet these qualifications, beware that you are indoctrinated into the order of Dungeon Crawl Classics, and will find kind fellows of similar sentiment also within this order. You may proceed in good health. So, like I said, I'm not somebody who, meets all of these qualifications, but at the same time, this rule set absolutely changed the way I look at a lot of aspects of role playing, because I'm somebody that started with 5th edition. So this was very eye opening, and I love the ever living shit out of it. All right, so the core mechanics. So basically, D20 add and subtract modifiers. You're used to that. You got armor class, you got difficulty class, all those kinds of things. Roll 1 is automatic miss or fumble often. So it does like the system uses fumbles. That is part of the system. And it is part of the heart of the system. And then you also have criticals. A natural 20 is automatic hit, often results in critical success of some kind. All right, so you may roll a die other than a D20 when acting. So it could be a D16, a D24, a D30, depending on your level of like proficiency or training or just the situation. So they have this thing called the die chain. So we're going to get into that. All right, so how is this game different from what I've played before? This is going to break down a lot of what I'm going to try and explain. So I'm not going to just read it to you, but more or less, it says, if you're familiar with D20 systems 3 and 3.5, so you basically, power building is not going to happen. It is not part of the system. It's not built in any way. This is a system where you are creative with what you got. And then it has races class. So that is a callback to back in the fucking day. I mean, not even AD&D had races class. All right, so we got ascending AC. I think that even we old school grognards can acknowledge that that is probably the better way to doing things, even if we like THAC0. THAC0 is a new thing to me, and I still think it's pretty neat. But at the same time, ascending AC is just a lot easier for a lot of people. So, all right, so you have attacks and saving throws. All right, saving throws have been taken down to Fortitude, Reflex, and Willpower. So if you're familiar with 3rd edition, it should seem familiar. All right, so this is kind of where it gets more into some specifics. Clerics turn creatures which are unholy to their religion. So that is not necessarily undead. It's just whatever their deity fucking hates. All right. So it gives you a little bit more of a leeway when it comes to basically flavoring the religion. It wouldn't make sense for a cleric of death to turn undead so much, unless you're looking at it like, well, they control them, but yeah. Anyway, so all spells are cast with a spell check. You roll d20, you add certain modifiers, and you try to score high. The higher the result, the better the spell results. Each spell has a unique chart which adjudicates the spell results. This is why you got so many pages about spells, is because of the fact that whenever you cast spells, you roll the dice to see how successful you are, if you even pass it, and then you go to the page where the spell is and you see what your result is. And it is going to be different every time. Well, not every time. I mean, you will get the same results more than once if you keep casting. But there are several tiers of results. And this kind of makes Magic very interesting, very fun. It's unpredictable in a lot of ways. So wizards may or may not lose their spells after a casting. So completely different from Vancian magic. Completely different. A low result means the wizard cannot cast a spell again that day. On a high result, he can cast a spell again. Usually it's like if you score like an 11 or lower, it's for damn sure that you're going to lose a spell for the day. All right, Cleric spellcasting works different. Basically, you don't lose it. If you fail, you just get disapproval with your deity. If you score low enough, well, actually, your disapproval range goes up. So we'll get into that later. Critical hit matrix, you can burn off ability scores to enhance die rolls. This is kind of where the gamer is going to get a lot out of the system, in that they have this resource that they can gamble with. Basically, sometimes it's going to be worth it to burn your luck in order to make sure that you can kill this thing right now. So maybe you need to burn a few points of luck in order to land a hit, because you're damn sure that you've almost killed the thing. You need this fucking hit to land. And if it lands, then, you can save everybody's lives because they're about to do some big spell or something. But the problem is that after you get through this, that luck is gone. The only way to get it back is through a certain means. And there are certain mechanics where basically the less luck you have, the more fucked you're going to get. Especially if you die. If you go down to 0, you do a luck check to see if you survived or not. Okay, so character creation, very simple. So that one of the features of DCC is the character creation funnel. It is something that you either love or you hate. I really enjoy it. And I, before I played DCC, I actually did the same thing with 5th edition, create 0 level characters. And basically, this gives a lot of benefits. So you basically have multiple PCs that each player is going to use. You are all peasants from the same place, generally speaking. So you get like a shared backstory. This is kind of like, you don't really worry about backstory so much. It's front story. It's not even front story. It's basically what transpires throughout the game that is the what you focus on. So, basically, your peasants are going to typically be pretty shit. I mean, you roll 3d6 in a row. Most of the time, they will be lucky if they get if they get some +1 modifiers. Then if they get a +2, wow. If they get a +3, holy shit, So it's usually pretty clear what class they're going to be if they survive. And what you do is you run them through these very dangerous places where, a peasant really has no place in being. They win treasure, they fight monsters, they level up, and they start on their journey to be heroes. Or not even heroes. You're not even heroes in this. You're treasure hunters more than anything. But you can do heroic things. All right, so a lot of them are going to die. High mortality rate is a matter of course. By the end of the first game, the players are left with a motley crew of survivors, and they become the first level party. Okay, so it's not something that everybody's going to be into. It's a particular type of play that some people are just radically opposed to. They want to really be invested in their characters, start to finish. And this is not a way to play for you to do that. And DCC, I will say, is a system where if you focus too much on, investment in a single character, then a lot of times you could end up being heartbroken because death comes very quickly. All right, so Funky Dice, this is the section I was talking about there. So they basically have this section here where they break down how to simulate the Funky Dice if you don't want to have them. So D3, roll a D6, divide by 2. Obviously, you round for a D5. Roll D10 and divide by 2 for a D7. Roll a D8 and re-roll on an 8. So it's just little tricks here and there to make it work. I will say this, the dice chain, I think, is a very cool idea. What we used to do is, we would just have penalties or bonuses, and that's it. And then with 5th edition, we had advantage and disadvantage. The dice chain allows you to give somebody a little bit more or less of a flat probability. Because like advantage and disadvantage, it has a very weird way of affecting your chances. Whereas whenever you have the dice chain, it can be a very slight change. It can be kind of a pretty significant change. But at the same time, it's a fun way of handling it. Basically, whenever somebody is fortunate enough to go from a D20 to a D24, they are going to have significantly more success. But not so much that it's insane, and really not so much that modifiers are going to, whenever you use just static modifiers, it gets kind of crazy. So basically, you go up on the chain whenever things are better for them. Whenever they have a situation where it goes better, or there are actually some built-in situations that the game will tell you. Like they get a step up, or you go down if they're at some kind of disadvantage. So it's very easy to do. It's a very neat little system. All right, ability scores. So one thing that you'll notice is they got rid of wisdom and charisma, and it has been wrapped up into personality. So you still have 6 stats though, because you have a luck stat. So you have strength. It's agility instead of dexterity. It's stamina instead of constitution, etc., etc. So they basically tell you here, do not do the 4d6 drop the lowest. Do not do that. Roll 3d6 in a row. They kind of give you, like an idea of why they suggest that you do it that way. And I mean, they really don't tell you exactly why you should, but they're just like, seriously, trust us, guys. All right. So this gives you an idea of the stats. So y'all know what these are for the most part. So strength, you understand. You understand that. I mean, this mostly basic D&D stuff. Characters with a strength of 5 or less can carry a weapon or a shield, but not both. So if you have a very low strength, you're not going to be using 2 weapons, or for damn sure you're not going to be using them. All right. So agility affects armor class, missile attack throws, initiative rolls, and reflex saving throws, as well as the ability to fight with a weapon in each hand. So if you have a high enough agility, you can dual wield. If you don't, you're going to have significant penalties. You cannot crit, just don't, you don't even want to bother at that point. So stamina is going to affect hit points and fortitude saving throws. You always get at least 1 hit point per character level. And if you have a 5 or less stamina, you take double damage from all poisons and diseases. All right, so personality, again, this is kind of the wisdom and charisma stat. So you have charm, strength of will, persuasive talent. It affects willpower, saving throws for all characters. It is vitally important for clerics, as it affects their ability to draw upon divine power, determines the maximum spell level they can cast. So, as you can see, it kind of wraps them both in. And it's fine. It was just kind of weird for me at first. I was used to having a wisdom stat and a charisma stat. But all right, so some of the features, or the reason that you might have used wisdom in the past is actually been wrapped up into intelligence. So ability to discern information, retain knowledge, and assess complex in situations. So let's see. Wizards, it affects your spell count and maximum spell level. So there is a maximum spell level based on your intelligence. So if you're going to be a wizard with a low intelligence, you're going to have a bad time. All characters affects known languages. If you have a 7 or less, you can only speak common. And if you have a 5 or less, you can't read or write, which is possible. You know, my cleric that I've rolled for 2nd edition D&D, he has a 5 intelligence, and that was, you know, with the 3d6 spread. So it does happen. Luck, right place, right time. So luck is going to be a big thing. It's kind of one of the killer apps, and there are many. There are a lot of killer apps in this game, and luck is definitely one of them. All right, so this is how ability score modifiers work. It uses a bell curve. So if you're not familiar, you're used to in 5th edition, every 2 points is like a +1 on the modifier scale. For this one, basically you have this. So you got 4 spots here. This is how it's easy to remember. You know, it's from 9 to 12 is a 0. Okay. All right. So that's 4 spots, right? So if you can remember that, you can remember the rest, because now from 6 to 8 is a -1. That's 3 spots. And then you got 2 spots, you know, from 4 to 5 is a -2, and you got 1 spot for -3. Then it's the same way in the other direction. It's very easy to remember once you can kind of like remember, all right, you got 4, 3, 2, 1. It's very, very easy from that point. And what this does is it creates a situation where you have these modifiers not being like, you're not going to have a whole lot of +3s. A +3 is kind of like a rare thing. A -3 is an incredibly rare thing. I mean, they're both equally rare, to be fair, you know, from statistical point of view. But at the same time, they're very, very, very rare. And most of the time, you're going to be living kind of in this area, maybe a little bit of that. So, well, you're really going to have a whole lot of this, though. So usually, whenever you roll your character, they're going to have one thing that they're really good at. That's usually how it ends up. Sometimes you're fucking lucky and there's multiple, but so you can't even cast spells if you have a 3. It's kind of funny, the idea that you're going to be able to cast spells if you can't even read or write. So yeah, I guess that would be the 5. All right. So max spell level. I mean, you're going to have this cut off right here for a lot of spellcasters. But it's not a big deal because of the fact that a lot of times you're not going to get up high enough level for it to be a big difference. Okay, so roll. All right, luck determines a lot of things. So you roll your luck stat, and then you determine, all right, so you roll it, you check here. So like, let's say I have a 15 in luck. Okay, that's a pretty good one. So I'll have a +1 modifier. So then what I do is I roll on my birth augur. So my birth augur is going to be kind of like this little feature. It's, you know, like whenever you're born, what's special about you. And it can be either good or bad, or it could not even be a thing. If you have a luck modifier of anything other than 0, then that's whenever you worry about this. So, so you roll this, and let's say you get a 20. Struck by lightning, reflex saving throws. So what that means is that, because remember I had a +1 because I had 15 luck, then I have a +1 for reflex saving throws. If I had a -2 and I rolled a 13, on my spell checks are going to be at a -2. So that's probably not somebody you want to have casting spells. It's very simple. It's still kind of a neat little thing. You know, it's not terribly important. It's not crucial to the system or anything like that, but it's kind of neat. All right, so saving throws. This gives you, just an idea of what they are. They're like so incredibly different that it's very hard to possibly confuse them. So I mean, Fortitude, it's just like anything that involves like how tough you are, reflex anything about how good your reflexes are, and then willpower is all the stuff that has to do with, magic, charm, control, psychic effects, like all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Languages, it's really nothing special there. It's an RPG. You're familiar with that. All right, so this is one of the things that's kind of different. Every 0 level character has D4 hit points modified by stamina. So this is kind of like how you get an idea of how most NPCs are. You don't start with much money. You start with 0 XP. You get a randomly determined piece of equipment, one randomly determined occupation. And so the occupation is kind of like your backstory, more or less. And it gives you an idea of what kinds of things you might be trained in. All right, so based on the occupation, possession of one weapon and training in its use, and possession of some trade goods. Now, at 0 level, you have no modifier for attack rolls and saving throws. They use a crit die of 1d4 on table 1. So there's different crit tables for different classes and levels. So basically, the better you are at kicking ass, the like more exotic your crit chart is. Okay. Your that's basic. So once you reach 10 XP, you can choose a class. You're just a peasant until then. So occupation, it's a really, really cool system. It's basically like just really, DCC is one of the best systems when it comes to just, like we're going to play a game. We don't have a whole lot of time to worry about making characters or anything like that. In DCC, you can drop down like a character and just boom, like you're started. Like, you can roll a new character in 5 minutes. And then if they're lucky enough to survive, to get 10 XP, then you can worry about getting them their first class level. And then you just kind of go from there. So it's really fucking nice. All right. When it comes to Demi Humans, so Demi Humans, that's a reference to halflings, elves, dwarves. I think those are the only Demi Humans that are written into the game explicitly. I could be wrong. So basically, Dwarven Miner levels up as a dwarf. So it doesn't, if you are a demi-human, you are that class whenever you get to be level 1. So there's no halfling that becomes a thief. There's no halfling that becomes a fighter. The halfling is a halfling. So this racist class thing, basically, it gives you like a kind of Tolkien-esque view of races, where the belonging to that race has a lot of implications for like what you're good at and things like that. Some people don't like that. I like it because I feel like it's a very rich idea, and it gives you a lot of it makes those things kind of more important, but it's something that not everybody appreciates, but whatever. All right, so occupation. So there are 100 entries. Well, not 100 entries, but there's 100. You roll a D100 and you have, I'm going to say probably about 90 entries by the look of it. Some are a little bit more likely than others. But these are all things that, like some, like this is very strong in the medieval aesthetic. So, the medieval fantasy aesthetic, even more so than most D&D. So, you got the Gong Farmer here, so they they collect the shit. You got a herder, you got a chest maker, cut purse, a beetle, astrologer. They're just they're very all over the place, and there's all kinds of things that you could have been doing. And the idea is basically, let's say you are so you're a gambler. You start with a club, probably because you piss off a lot of people, and like you might need to use it every now and then you start with dice for your gambling. If you are an herbalist, you start with a club, maybe to whack things that try to attack you while you're collecting things, and you start with a pound of herbs. If you're a herder, you get a staff, because they all have staffs. Come on. And then you get a herding dog. The herding dog can be used for herding dog purposes. It varies. Everybody starts with a little something different. Some of them actually start with really good shit, that's very useful. Like the squire starts with a long sword and a steel helmet. That's a pretty fucking good way to start. But for the most part, you're going to have a lot of people with a lot of weird objects that they're going to have to use creatively to get any use out of. So there are a few of them that have like a little extra bits here, but that's not terribly important. All right, so weapon training. All level 0 characters are trained in the one weapon they possess from their former occupation. So if you're going to use something other than that, you are going to have a penalty. It says that they waive that for 0 level characters because they're naturally, they're shit at combat anyway. So, all right, trade goods. That was that. We already went through that. All right, so alignment. Alignment is a little bit different than you might be used to. Alignment is a choice of values, which you probably are used to. But you don't have good, neutral, evil. You have only lawful, chaotic, and neutral. So you have people that are part of unity and pride towards the values of mankind, order, authority, loyalty, and charity. Chaotic are going to be basically the ones that are trying to disrupt the natural order of things, to break things down. They're all about entropy and just chaos in the worst of ways. So this is, from what I understand, kind of like the more traditional approach. Then neutral, they're, we're just out there. We're part of nature. We're not part of this whole struggle that much. All right, so there is kind of like an implication here that the eternal struggle between law and chaos is real. Gods and demons battle on other planes for superiority. The actions of man give those entities power. Make your choice carefully, for it will become increasingly important as you become more powerful. My DCC judge that I first played with had us just roll a D3 to determine our alignment, and it was pretty cool because it was never a choice that we would make for the purpose of making things easy for us, All right, so advancement is really very simple. It's just like there's anywhere between, every encounter is between 0 and 4 XP, and it could be for anything. It's just like the harder the encounter is, the more you get. And then so if let's say you to get to level 1 to get that 10 XP, you need to have accomplished maybe 2 very hard encounters and 1 medium one. So and it goes all the way to 1090. So it's a very, you're dealing with small numbers. It still takes a reasonably long time to level up. I actually, with my group, I've been kind of doing it fast. I cut the chart in half because at the time COVID was kind of crazy and I was terrified I was going to die young. So I was like, you know what? I want y'all to get to experience the game before I croak. So, I cut the chart in half and I was like, all right, we're just going to do it that way. And it has been moving quickly. They are level 5 right now, and we've been playing a few months, so that's pretty fucking fast. So I don't do what I did. Just use it like it's written. A lot of characters are going to die, but they can level up fairly quickly to get back up to level 3, and then it slows down some. Not terribly though. I mean, so like look at it. So you need 10 XP, and then you need 40, and then you need 60, and then you need 80, and then you need 100, and then you need 120, 140. You know, so I mean, it's just a little bit more every time. The big jump is between 1 and 2. All right, so choosing a class. So you already have that D4, remember? So that D4 plus stamina. And now you get, whenever you get to level 1, you get to roll again. You keep that D4. Yeah, so you get a little bit more at level 1 than you would in most games, but you really fucking need it. You really, really need it. So weapon training. So each class actually, I mean, you're used to that, like proficiencies with certain things based on your class. This is a little bit more explicit on what those things are rather than doing just categories. All right, so the action dice is basically going to be the D20 usually, but it's not always. Let's see. Whenever you advance in level, you may get additional action dice. So what that means is that basically once you get to like level 5, you get to do your first attack at D20. And then you get to do maybe another attack with a D14 or a D16. I can't remember which. I think it's a D16. So like you're less likely to hit on that second attack, but you get to try. So it says typically start so a D14. Let's see. So yeah, if you're a spellcaster, you can use that to cast additional spells. So if you are a wizard, which is basically like the arcane spellcaster, there's not, like sorcerer and all that kind of stuff. Although there are like zines and stuff like that that have added those things. Then you can actually cast multiple spells per action or per turn. So, but it's dangerous. So, yeah, it's magic goes pretty crazy in this. Titles are really terribly unimportant, but they're interesting. It's fun to have a title on your page, and I'll go over that. All right. So first things first. Here's the cleric. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The cleric is probably one of the most useful and the most, I would say, like, they get the most mileage. They get a ton of mileage in this fucking game because of the fact that it's very forgiving of the clerics. They can do so much. Clerics are... It's really pretty nuts, but at the same time, they did not do hardly anything in making sure that people understood what the cleric, like what about anything about deities. Like the deities get like a page, and it's like all of them together, and it's like I would have liked a little bit more fluff there personally, but I think there was a rumor that basically they didn't really like the idea of clerics, but they knew that people would want them. So if you don't like clerics, there is such thing as DCC Lankmar. There are no clerics in DCC Lankmar, and the system works fine anyway because there's other ways of getting health back and stuff. So just something to keep in mind. But that said, clerics are really awesome in DCC. So... Your god must match your alignment. Your choice of god must match your alignment and determines your weapon groups, holy powers, and magical spells. You can only choose, so clerics may choose from the gods on page 32. Of course, it's assumed that you can always, make your own for your game. All right, so page 32 will tell you your weapon trainings. The rest of the classes, weapon training is explicit. You can wear armor, and spell checks are not hindered by your use. So this is a huge deal. Huge deal. I mean, you're probably used to that from 5th edition if you've played it, if you play that. But Yeah, so you can wear heavy armor and you can still cast spells. Cleric's alignment must match your gods. This stuff is really not terribly useful for my purposes right now. A cleric who changes alignment loses the support of their god. They lose access to all spells and powers from cleric levels earned under his old alignment. So your character is no longer a cleric, basically, if you change alignment. So this is back old school style, where the DM can punish you big time. Caster level. So whenever you do your checks, a lot of them involve caster level, and this is something I love. It's something that was in AD&D, and it is a great way to do things, to allow them to work off of something that's not just their modifier. So as you play, you are getting better. Like, it doesn't matter that your modifier for intelligence, or in this case personality, isn't going up. You are getting better because you are more experienced as a cleric than you were before. I love this. Let's see. Caster level is usually his level as a cleric, but may be modified under certain circumstances. Many clerics adventure in search of holy relics that bring them closer to their gods and thus increase caster level. Yes, good stuff. All right, magic. So they use idle magic. Successful use allows you to channel your god's power as a magical spell. To cast a spell, you make a spell check. So you roll a d20, you add your personality modifier, you add your caster level. So typically, this is only going to be like a +1, maybe +2, maybe a +3 if you're really lucky. And then, at level 1, so you might get a +4 on this roll. And I'm running you through the math a little bit. Like, basically a level 1 spell is usually going to have to be a 12 or higher on your roll. So, I mean, if you have, let's say, a +2, which is going to be regular from this, so you're going to need to roll a 10 or higher. So 50% chance of success. If you succeed, your god attends your quest. You look at the chart, it tells you exactly what you get. Not always predictably, generally positive results. If you fail, you risk disapproval. So disapproval is this system that basically simulates how, the fact that you're such a needy little bitch and you keep on asking your deity for things, eventually your deity is going to get mad. So, natural 1 is always disapproval. Now, so disapproval, there's a chart for it. And bad stuff happens that the cleric has to deal with. So you got a 5% chance of, always at least a 5% chance of disapproval. All right, so each time you fail your spell check, it increases the chance of disapproval. This is kind of like one of the things that they use to try and keep clerics in check. But it's one of the things that's a problem is it's really too forgiving. It is too forgiving, and I'll explain why. So after you fail for the first time and you don't roll a natural 1, now you have a disapproval range of 2. So that means that if you try again and you roll a 2, you get disapproval, and it just keeps going up. So if you fail 5 times in a day, then if you roll a 5 or lower on your spell check, you got disapproval. So that is how that works. Now, here is the problem. When the cleric regains spells in the following day, his disapproval range is reset to a natural 1. Yeah. So that is kind of where it starts to... If you are running a campaign that has consistent adventure, I guess you would say, boom, 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 just constant adventure. The cleric is really just an energizer battery for the most part, unless they're just going a really long time without being able to sleep. That's really the only thing, because they're just like, well, I got disapproval. Disapproval sucks, but all I have to do is sleep it off. So, penalties can be offset by sacrifices. Once a cleric's range of disapproval increases beyond a natural 1, you can reduce it by offering sacrifices to your deity. So there are certain things that you can provide for your deity that will make them forgive you, basically. Now, one thing that they have that is really neat, I very much appreciate it because it should be obvious. It should be obvious, but it's not. And and admittedly, in kind of like the old way of clerics, if you are praying at the beginning of the day, can I have this miracle and this miracle, and then it's kind of like they give you the power. It's lodged in your brain. You can use it as you will. It kind of makes sense that like you could use that power in a way that your deity might not approve of at that time and won't do anything. And so you go back and ask again. But in this case, like there can be immediate bad effects whenever you try and do such a thing. So if you try and heal somebody of an opposite alignment, basically it is a sin. Or aiding a character of opposed belief or deity, even if of the same alignment. So there's a lot more. There's that additional check and balance, which is definitely something to consider. So I mean, if you have a lawful or a chaotic cleric, and then you also have people in the party that are of the opposing alignment, they can't heal them without penalties. They just can't. When a cleric commits a sin, well, I mean, they can, but it's a sin. They may occur an additional increase in their disapproval range. This could amount to an increase of +1 for minor infractions, all the way to +10 for significant transgressions. These additional penalties are always at the judge's discretion. So you can choose to ignore this, but no matter what, whenever you try and heal somebody of an opposing alignment, it's less effective. Sacrifices, turn unholy. So it's not turn undead, it's turn unholy. So this could be all kinds of things. It says typically this includes undead, demons, and devils, but you got to check the charts for your deity to see. And if you're creating a new deity, you need to have this in mind. So D20 plus personality modifier plus character. So that's how you do turn unholy. And then there is a chart on how effective it is. So theoretically, you could turn unholy, and it might affect aberrations. It might affect traitors. It might affect people that are oppressive. It could affect anything. So it just depends on what your deity believes, what they hate. So healing is separate from spells. It is you use a spell check to do it, but it is not a spell. So, and it has a little bit more oomph to it because you can use healing depending on. All right, so I mean, I'll just show you the table. So you roll your spell check right here. All right, so here's the easy chart. So let's say that you roll a 14. Okay, and you're saying if you're of the same alignment, then let's say you heal the fighter. That means they get to roll 3d10 because they have a hit dice of d10, and you gave them 3. So basically, at that point, they can heal that much, and it like there's nothing stopping you from doing it again and doing it again. The only thing is that if you fail, then basically you are failure increases disapproval range. So again, but disapproval range is like not something that's usually going to be a huge issue unless you're like have a really, really long adventuring day. It matters though. I will admit it matters. It's just not like a huge deal. But look at how much you can actually heal even at level 1. At level 1, let's say you roll a natural 20. Okay, you're really fucking lucky. You roll a natural 20, so you got 4 dice. 4 dice of healing on somebody that's of the same alignment as you. Well, look at what that can cure. Blindness or deafness. Just, if they're blind or deaf, just like, you can just fucking heal it. It's gone. And that's just with your lay on hands ability. You can get rid of poison. You can get rid of paralysis. You can get rid of disease, organ damage, broken limbs. Broken limb is just 1 die. Just 1 die. Like, so I mean, you could roll a fucking 12, and you could heal somebody's broken limb even if they're of the opposite alignment of you. So clerics are very powerful in this game. That is just the truth. Like, this is what they're capable of at first level. So then you have, obviously, if they're an opposed thing, then they are going to get less healing from you because your deity's like, I don't know. I'm not happy about it either. All right, so you can just beseech your deity for divine aid, but it is it's pretty serious. So, extraordinary act imparts a cumulative +10 penalty to future disapproval range. Based on the spell check, you'll describe the result. So it just, like you can ask your deity directly to do something for you, but it's not gonna, like, that's a huge deal. That is a huge fucking deal. That's a last fucking resort, basically. Luck modifier applies to all spell checks and turn unholy creatures. It does not affect lay on hands from what it says. So whenever they get more action dice, which you can see they get at level 6, they can use that for attack rolls or spell checks. So, you can attack somebody and then you can cast a spell in the same turn. All right, so this is where I was talking about how the gods don't really get shit. They do not get shit. Like, it's just like this very, 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 very slight description here. And it's not like Forgotten Realms or anything like that, where you can, go on a wiki and it'll tell you everything that you need to know about the fiction developed for these gods and goddesses. So, but fortunately, there is a supplement. It is very inexpensive. It's called Celestial Key to the Divine Legion, I believe it's called. It's by Dawn Stroud, and I use it all the time. And it is how I took Pelagia, the goddess of the sea, and I made a whole bunch of cool shit for her. And I actually did a video on that somewhere. So you can check that out if you like. All right, it might not have been a video. It might have been a blog post. I think it might have been a blog post. So anyway, as you can tell, the alignment here is going to determine, is really the most important part, functionally speaking, because it determines what weapons you get training for. So law, you get club, mace, sling, staff, warhammer. That's kind of the real basic shit that we're used to, because, that's the whole blunt thing. And then you got undead, demons, devils, chaotic extraplanar creatures, monsters like basilisk or Medusa, chaos primes, chaotic humanoids, chaotic dragons. So it is a wide variety. So, you may have an entire campaign in normal D&D where you never get to turn undead because you don't encounter undead. But you're always going to counter unholy pretty much at some point whenever you're playing DCC. Neutral is really one of the most powerful, I would say, because you get mundane animals. You can be like, oh look, it's a squirrel, turn. It's such a fucking weird concept, but there it is. But they also get undead, demons, devils. They get monsters, lycanthropies, perversions of nature. Perversions of nature is something that I feature in a lot of my campaigns. So, and then you got chaos. So chaos, they're the ones that get to use axes. Woo! They don't care if they chop a bitch down. Angels, paladins, lawful dragons, lords of law, lawful primes, law-aligned humanoids, which includes goblins. It's interesting that they're law-aligned. Okay. more beautiful art. So the thief. I love the thief in this game. All right. So again, your alignment matters with this. So how is the thief different? So, I mean, you get a D6 hit points. That's pretty normal for thieves in D&D setting games. I know that in 5th edition they get a D8, but basically 5th edition is a little bit more generous than a lot of the older stuff. So let's see. All right, so here is just kind of like an explanation on how the thieves are typically going to be depending on their alignment. And this is reflected in the skill bonuses that they get. So you get Thieves' Cant. If you know what Thieves' Cant is, it's the same. You know what Thieves' skills might be, but how they work. You roll D20, add your modifier. You have to beat the DC assigned to the task at hand. So just like in 5th edition, it's going to vary depending on how difficult it is supposed to be. You need tools in order to do certain skills, like handling poisons, forged documents, climbing sheer surfaces, picking locks, disabling traps. So whenever you succeed with a backstab, whenever attacking a target from behind or when they're otherwise unaware, you receive an indicated attack bonus to your attack roll. If you hit, you automatically achieve a critical hit. So automatically being able to achieve a critical hit is a big fucking deal because criticals are very cool in this game. It's not just double the dice, although that probably would be pretty damn useful. Well, this is better. This is better. Typically, backstabs are combined with checks to sneak silently or hide in shadows, such that a thief attacks with surprise and is able to backstab. Certain weapons are particularly effective with backstab attempts, which I really love, and do additional damage as noted in the equipment list. So you'll notice that it really doesn't matter what you're using, you can still backstab. It's just certain things are better for it. All right, so there's also sneak silently. They do a good job of like illustrating kind of like how these should work, which is probably the most that they do with skills in the whole game. But since that's like what the thief does, I see, that's why it's important. So there's pickpocket, climb sheer surfaces, pick lock, find trap and disable trap, forge document, disguise self, read languages, handle poison. If you fail, like there can be some bad things that happen. You can poison yourself. Cast spell from a scroll, which is like I think just a thief feature in 5e. Like it's not like a rogue feature. So you get luck and wits. This is another very defining feature of the thief. Basically, they get to roll a die. So whenever you use luck. Now, I guess I didn't go over that. So like, let's say I am trying to climb something, and I roll a 10. But I know that I need to roll higher in order to succeed. But let's say failure is going to possibly be death or like some huge setback. Maybe I'm going to make a lot of noise. There could be just a ton of problems. So if I was any other character, I might spend, 5 points of luck to get it to a 15 so that I can succeed. And then my luck stat goes from a 15 down to a 10. Okay. And it doesn't go back up. Now the thief, they get to spend a die with every, they get what's called a thief die or a luck die. And so every time they spend 1 point of luck, they get to roll that die and they get to add that number to their check. So they are more effective at using luck than anybody else. Secondly, they get lost luck every night by a number of points equal to their level. So if I were to spend, 2 points of luck, and I am a level 2 thief, the next night I wake up and my luck is back to normal. It cannot go past its natural maximum. But yeah, so they are the ones that are going to be more successful at most things. And I think that's cool. So as you can see, it starts as a D3, but it goes way the fuck up. So, you know, just imagine being able to roll a D16 and adding that to something just by spending 1 point of luck. It's serious. It's a lot of cool shit, and you can use that on any roll except damage or fumbles. Basically, any kind of, you can't use it on luck checks, and you can't use it on attack rolls or attack damage rather. So as you can see, this is how they break up like your bonuses based off of level and alignment. So if I'm a level 5 chaotic thief, here are my skills right here, this line right here. So +9 to backstab, you know, +9 to sneak silently, etc., etc., etc. And it differs from the +5 of the lawful variety. So the lawful one is going to be not as good at handling poison, but they are going to be better at finding and disabling traps. That is kind of more of they're not going to be good at forging documents as you know, compared to the chaotic thief. The chaotic thief is not going to be as good at reading languages. So, yeah, that's how they do that. It kind of emulates the differences in what you would be doing with your skills. I very much appreciate that. All right, the warrior is the simplest. I was wrong. They get a D12. The warrior is the simplest, and they get like a really cool mechanic called Mighty Deeds. So first off, whenever they attack, they don't get an attack modifier that's fixed at each level like the other ones do. You know, like in a lot of systems, like they get an attack bonus that goes up with every level or whatever. In this one, basically they get a die that they get to roll. So if they roll, they like first level, they get a D3 for their deed die. So every time you attack, you roll the D3, and you can declare, I am going to attack, and while doing so, I'm going to like throw sand in their eyes or something like that. So you roll your D20, you roll your D3, and you add your strength. Okay? Very simple, very simple. And if you roll a 3 or higher on your deed die, then that extra effect happens. So if I roll that 3 and I hit on my regular attack, that means that I have, you know, thrown sand in their eye. The enemy has a, you know, like minus, like a lower, they roll their next attack at like with a D14 instead of a D20. Then whenever you get higher in level, the deed die gets bigger. And every time that you roll, like, so the higher you roll on the deed die and succeed, the more awesome the deed gets. So, you know, maybe I have a deed die of a D8 or something, or D10 or, you know, something like that. So let's say I roll the maximum, I roll like a 10, and I say, you know, that for my deed, I'm going to like slash at their eyes. Maybe I permanently blinded them. You know, so it's like, it's really cool the way that works. You can do all kinds of crazy ass stunts, and there's a list of like what those can include. So criticals, they're most likely to get criticals. They roll the highest crit die on the tables with the most devastating effects. So, I mean, the warrior kicks ass in this game. This is a game where it's very good to be a fighter. You can use your luck modifier with a specific kind of weapon. So like, let's say I have a luck modifier of +2, and I choose to have my luck weapon be the short sword. Every time I use a short sword, I get to add that +2 to my attack. So it's just a neat little thing. Let's see. So Mighty Deeds. They give some like descriptions of what that kind of stuff entails. All right. I forgot to mention that you get saves that are depending on your class, save bonuses rather. class and level. So it's a bit of that old school flavor there too. Threat range, this means if you roll a 19 or a 20, you crit, and then it goes higher. So whenever you get up to level 10, or actually level 9, you crit on a 17. And at that point, you are rolling a very, very, very powerful crits. I also forgot to mention, so here's the title thing. Basically, if you're level 1 lawful warrior, then you're a squire. If you're a level 1 neutral warrior, you're a wildling. And then, these kind of go up. They go up to level 5, but then after that, you get to make up your own. Or they have a list you can choose from. It just adds a little bit of extra flavor. There's this whole concept of militant orders to give you some idea of how a warrior might fit into a particular faction or something like that in the world. Pretty neat little thing. Wizard. So the wizard is very much why a lot of people want to play, because the wizard is fucking awesome in this game. And it's also wild. It's completely fucking nuts. So they only get a D4 hit points, so they are squishy. As far as weapons, they're trained in dagger, longbow, longsword, shortbow, short sword, and staff. That's a pretty good spread, you got to admit. I mean, so this is kind of like the whole Gandalf, using a staff and a longsword. They don't wear armor as it hinders spell casting. The heavier the armor that you wear, the more it affects your spell checks. So you usually don't wear armor. So chaotic wizards usually study black magic. Neutral or lawful usually seek control over elements. That all practice enchantment. I usually don't actually use that. I just kind of have them roll at random to see what they get. Now, caster level, it's usually just your level. Unlike the cleric, where they can have this additional stuff from relics and things like that, but you can always tweak it. All right. So at first level, you have 4 spells that it looks like you're not supposed to determine it randomly. Whoops. That moment when you realize that you've been doing it wrong. It might have been painted by the fact that I played Lamentations and you roll randomly to start with. No. Okay. Known spells are determined randomly. They may be of any level for which they're eligible. Okay, so I am doing it right. Ha! They had me worried there. All right, so spell check, D20 plus intelligence, modifier plus caster level. And that can change depending on some certain things. So you can get patrons. So if you're familiar with warlocks in 5e, you can get patrons in this game, but it's a very different relationship, and it is one that I think is perfect. Patrons give you very, very, very powerful magic, but they are not free. So in order to invoke a patron, so this is after you have already bound yourself to them, you have to spell burn at least 1 point of an ability score. So I don't know if I went over spell burn, but the idea is that you can say, all right, I'm going to spell burn 1 point of stamina. So that means that you use up that point of stamina from your ability scores, but it can come back after a good day of rest or something. But you can only get 1 point in each category per day. So you can use that spell burn in order to invoke patron if you have a patron, or you can do it to just boost your rolls. So it's kind of like the luck in that case. But remember, if you use up all of your strength, then you can be completely sapped of energy by the end of an adventure because of all this kind of stuff. So it's a very, very cool thing. It's very cool. So here are some patrons. I'm not going to go into that. So it's possible to get a familiar. You have to utilize the spell to obtain such a partner. So I don't even know why they put that here. Luck modifier applies to rolls for corruption and Mercurial Magic. Mercurial Magic is one of the very, very neat things that people hate or love. I love it. Action dice. No, we're not worried about that. So, you start out at first level. You got maximum spell level of 1. You know 4 spells. Every level, you gain a new spell. Eventually, you start gaining 2. And your maximum spell level goes up to 5. Apparently, there are like 6 level spells, I think, as I saw earlier, that you can get a maximum of 6 if you have 18 intelligence. So I don't know how that works. That might have been an oversight. But in any case, every other level, you get a higher max spell level. Now, the Dwarf. So what? It's a Dwarf. Yes, the Dwarf class. That's the one that gets a D10. They have very specific weapon training. They get a deed die, just like a warrior. They get mighty deeds like a warrior. They are better at sword and board than anybody else. So starting out, they roll a d20 for their normal attack, and then they can roll a d14 to shield bash. So that's kind of cool. They get Infravision, which is not dark vision. It's a little different. It's infrared, so I mean, like you can see heat. They're slower, so 20 feet instead of 30. Being underground lets them do that basic underground shit. That's really different. Probably the biggest thing that sticks out: a dwarf can smell golden gems. So they're pretty useful to have around, to be honest. Especially if you're trying to get money. Scent ranges are can be anywhere from 100 feet to 40 feet. 40 feet for a single coin or gem is pretty serious. Other than that, they're very much like the warrior. Their crit table is pretty much identical. They don't get the threat range, though. The threat range is missing. So it's, you get some good shit, you get some, you lose some. Elf. So Elf is a D6, but at the same time, they are kind of a Gish character. So they can cast spells. They are going to, they're able to invoke Patron. They automatically receive the spell Patron Bond and invoke Patron at first level. So automatically they have a patron, basically, they can have one. Whereas the wizard, they got to earn that spell, or they got to work on it somehow to get it. So they get Infravision. They get they're immune to magical speak and paralysis. They are extremely sensitive to iron. So that is something that you're probably not used to. So prolonged contact with iron causes 1 HP per day of direct contact. It's really not like that major. But so I mean, it could be worse, but basically they can't wear armor of iron or bear the touch of iron weapons for extended periods. So they're, just fundamentally, they're not going to use iron. So there's some mithril stuff that you can get. And I think they start with it, actually. See, heightened senses, they get a +4 to detect secret doors. And if they walk within 10 feet of a secret door, they are entitled to a check to detect it. So they have that kind of passive ability about them. Languages they're pretty good at. So as you can see, their crit table is 2, which is the the thief table, I believe. They don't really get as many spells as the wizard. But they are pretty cool. It's pretty, they get some pretty cool shit. Halfling. So Halfling is a D6, small but lucky. They are the dual wielders. So even if they have not the most wonderful agility, they can still dual wield. They can't use big ass weapons though. They get Infravision. let's see. They can get, because they're small, they can get in tiny holes and stuff like that. That would have been really useful in this one thing I ran. Stealth. They are really good at sneaking. So they actually kind of like the thief. They get a little bit more luck whenever they spend luck. They get, for every 1 point of luck, they get a +2 to their roll. And they get their luck back. And they can give luck to their allies. So it's a pretty neat little thing. If they see that somebody's about to fucking die, they can be like, oh, I'm going to give you just a bit of luck, laddie. And the next thing you know, they're doing all right. Let's see. Not much else really there. Well, actually, table 3. Actually, no, table 3 is, I think that's the cleric table. I could be wrong. We'll see in just a minute, actually. All right, skills. So the skill section is like 2 pages. Yeah, the skill section is like 2 pages. Because basically, they don't have a lot of predefined skills. The thieves do, but, skills are it's very ambiguous, and that's on purpose. Basically, if it's something that you should be trained in because of your class or whatever, you get to roll a d20 on it. If it's something that you are not skilled in, but you should be able to try it, then you can roll a d10. So that's an untrained skill check. It's very elegant. It's a very elegant system. I like it. But as you can tell, that means that most of the time, if you're going to try something that you're not skilled in, and it's something that is hard for somebody that would be skilled in it, it's basically impossible. So a DC 10 is a man's deed. Weak and unskilled could not likely achieve those tasks. So as you can see, you need to be trained to succeed for the most part, unless you're willing to spend a lot of luck. All right. Opposed skill checks, obvious. The higher wins. When not to make a skill check, it is only only make a skill check when practical descriptions by the players will not suffice. So, this kind of tells you that if you are playing a warrior, you could theoretically run through the entire process of disarming a trap by description alone. And that is how people used to play the game before thieves were invented. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's kind of the old school way of playing. All right, this kind of tells you what stat might apply for what or whatever. All right, equipment. Not really too much to go off here. The only thing I wanted to kind of show was that the let's see. These weapons inflict double damage on a charge. Particularly useful with the element of surprise if you succeed on a backstab attack with one of these weapons. Use the second damage value listed. So as you can see, the dagger, it uses a d10 if you backstab. Remember, I was talking about how it's better for that. A blackjack, so that's like a small club used for knocking people out. You get to use a 2d6. But it's always subdual damage, so it's for knocking people out. So this is a system that does use subdual damage. You can use a garrote, and it'll do a 3d4 if you're choking somebody out, and you're a thief doing a sneak attack. So pretty cool shit. Nice little thing there. Unarmored. So basically, you start with 10 base AC. You get to add your agility to it. And then these things boost them. One thing you'll notice, though, is that once you start getting into the heavier armors, you get a check penalty. So this is related to checks like reflex saves and agility checks, basically, because at that point you're less agile. It also starts affecting your speed eventually quite a bit, because a -10 for a fucking dwarf. Well, actually, I think the dwarf might not be affected by this, but I could be wrong. But you only get 20 to begin with as a dwarf, so that's pretty significant. All right, so the Fumble Die. As you can see, whenever you're unarmored, you have a D4 Fumble Die. What that means is that if you roll a nat 1, then you have to roll on the Fumble chart. You roll a D4, you subtract your luck modifier from your result, because it's good to roll low on it. So that's why the heavier the armor, the higher the Fumble Die. If you roll a 16 on a fucking Fumble Die, you're probably going to be fucked for a while. You're going to be stuck in on the ground for a while. And there's a chart for it. All right, they have pretty extensive equipment section, I would say. It is worthwhile. All right, so now you're getting into like kind of the nitty gritty for like running the game. A lot of this is pretty basic shit, you know, stuff about keeping time, all those kinds of things, about actions. So whenever I was talking about the whenever you get multiple action die, you can take an extra movement for your action, so you can move twice instead of using like an attack or whatever. You can, if you're a warrior, you can make an attack for each of your actions. If you're a wizard, you can attack or cast a spell with the first die and can only cast a spell with the second die. So you can't attack twice, but you can attack and then you can cast a spell, or you can just cast a spell twice. An elf can do either one, and so on according to class descriptions. All right, so this is kind of an idea of what actions require. There's certain actions that you can do while you're moving. So like open a door, equip or drop a shield, draw or sheathe a weapon. Those are things that you can do while you're moving. So you don't really have to use an action for that. But if you have already like kind of figured in all that kind of stuff, then, you know, like if you need to draw and sheathe, you know, you can draw. I don't know why you would do this, but you can draw your weapon as you're running and then use an action to sheathe it again. So, you know, or however mixtures of that you might need. This is something that's probably good to understand. Uncorking a potion is an action. Hey. Lighting a torch or a lantern is an action. You can't just do it, you know. Standing up from prone is an action. So if you get knocked down, you don't just use half movement. You gotta get up. Reading a scroll or drinking a potion is an action. So fundamentally, you need 2 actions in order to drink a potion in 1 round. You need if you don't have, you actually need 3. You need to locate it, you need to uncork it, and then you need to drink it. So that's 3 actions. So you're typically not going to be able to just do that in the middle of combat. All right. Armor class, attack roll. That's all basic shit. You got attack roll modifiers based on missile range, you know, all those kinds of things. This kind of tells you what to expect. So it could be anything from a slight penalty, or, you know, like if the defender is blinded, you get a +2 when you are attacking. If they are blinded and you're shooting, you get a +2. But if they're entangled, you get an extra die, like a higher die on the die chain. So you get to roll a d24. All right. Attack roll modifiers. Fumbles. I already went into that, so we don't need to worry about that. So here's the fumble chart, just to give you an idea of how bad it can be. So fumbles take place whenever you're attacking only. So this is only when you are attacking. So the lowest one, a 0 or less, you miss wildly but miraculously cause no other damage. So nothing bad happens. That's why you want to roll low. You know, like level 1, like a 1, you look like the laughing stock of the party, but nothing, you know, bad happens. All right, then like a 2 is probably what you're usually going to be dealing with whenever you roll an unarmored one, you know, the D4. So you can recover with a D10 reflex save, DC 10. Otherwise, you must spend the next round prone. So you fall down. So that's kind of like the waste of this action. And then the next round, you need to get up. So that like you're not going to attack until the following round. But let's look at the 16 plus. You accidentally strike yourself for normal damage plus an extra 1 point. In addition, you fall on your back and are unable to right yourself until you make an agility check. I have had this happen to me before because I was playing a paladin with heavy ass armor. Yes, I fell down like a turtle. Actually, it happens with a 14 also. But no. That's the one that happened to me. This is the one that happened to my friend that was playing with us. Yeah, it's pretty serious. All right, crits. So if you roll a dice greater than a d20, a crit occurs based on the highest possible result. So the higher the die that you're using, the less likely technically that you're going to crit. It's just an unfortunate side effect. If you roll a lower die, you don't crit by the highest possible result unless you're a halfling, I believe, or unless you have a high enough agility. Let's say you're dual wielding. It's a little complicated there. All right, so here's the crit tables. So anytime you roll a nat 20, and this is really exciting in the moment when it happens, it's like, ooh. So this is the weakest crit table right here, crit table 1. So this is for all level 0 characters and all wizards. So the best thing you can possibly do, which, by the way, whenever you roll on this thing at level 0, you only get to roll a d4. So this is the best thing that can happen for you. Well, let's say you have a high luck modifier. Smash the foe's hand, inflict an extra 2d3 damage with this strike. You break 2 of their fingers. So, I mean, it's nothing major by any means. You want to roll high, though. Let's see. You don't want to roll low. It actually has something bad happen, which kind of sucks. But let's say for some reason you can roll. Well, let's say you're a wizard, but you roll a 20 or higher. Lucky blow dents the skull, plus 2d6 damage with the strike. If they have no helm, they suffer permanent loss of intelligence. Oof. That's rough. Permanent. You may have just rendered somebody unable to cast spells or to understand language. Not to understand language, but to be able to read and write. All right, so crit table 2 is all thieves and elves. As you can see, roll 24 or higher. You can strike through the heart, plus 3d6 damage, and they must make a fortitude save of d20 plus PC level, or die instantly. That is rough. On the lower end, the lowest thing that really. That's the worst thing that can happen. Hesitation costs you the perfect strike, but a 0 or less is almost impossible for most of them. All right, then you got table 3. This is for clerics, halflings, level 1 to 3 warriors, and 1 to 3 dwarves. So this is moving up. At the very top end of this, you can destroy the spinal column. A plus 3d8 damage with the attack with a strike. They suffer a fort save or suffer paralysis. So it's pretty good. But I just want to show you like the best because crit table 5 for level 5 plus warriors. Foe decapitated with a single strike. You are death incarnate. Continue to make attacks against foes. Any foes within 10 feet until you miss. So, that's pretty fucking awesome. All right, mounted combat rules, mighty deeds. This gives you a lot more into what kinds of things you can do. So you got precision strikes, trips and throws, pushbacks, disarming attacks, blinding. There's rallying maneuvers, which I thought was really cool. Very emblematic of a warrior. Defensive maneuvers, weapon-specific deeds. So like the Warhammer is going to be better for crushing things or knocking people down. All right, so this is a good thing to know. Bleeding, damage and death. Bleeding out. So when you get to 0 HP, if you're level 0 character, you dead. You dead. But if you're level 1 or higher, you begin bleeding out. You have 1 round in which you can be healed to prevent your death at level 1. If you're healed on the round, you're reduced to 0 hit points. Wait. If he is healed on the round, he's reduced to 0 points, or on the next round, he's healed per the result of the lay on hands check. If he is not healed before the second round, he may be permanently killed. For each level past the first, the character has 1 more round of bleeding before they're permanently killed. So the higher level you are, the longer you can be bleeding out. Character that was bleeding out but was saved suffers permanent physical trauma from their near fatal injuries. So you really do not want to drop to 0 in this game. And this is something I really appreciate. Something I think that 5th edition faltered on, in making it, an important thing to not get stabbed. So anyone who's saved from bleeding out suffers a permanent loss of 1 stamina. In addition, they get a terrible scar. So let's say that you don't get them in time. So you can find the body. Like, let's say they fall off of a bridge or something. Then you make a luck check to see if they are still alive whenever you find their body. You turn the body over, you check them. They make a luck check. So if they have low luck, then there's a very small chance that they're going to still be alive. It's still pretty bad, even if you survive that way. So as you can see, they were simply knocked out, stunned, or otherwise incapacitated. They recover 1 hit point, but they're groggy for the next hour. So -4 penalty to all rolls. They sustain a permanent injury of some kind, reflected as a permanent penalty to strength, agility, or stamina determined randomly. So pretty serious stuff. Healing. Natural healing is slow. I don't know how I feel about this. I have mixed feelings. I think it makes sense in games where hit points are supposed to reflect like the stamina and luck, and if those kinds of things of the character, that like if you get a good night's rest, that stuff comes back. So if you get a good night's rest, you get 1 hit point. If you get an entire day, you heal 2. So that's pretty meager. It's pretty meager stuff. It kind of makes you really need clerics, doesn't it? Yes, it sure does. Critical hits heal when the associated damage heals. So basically, sometimes whenever you do crits, like you will inflict a long damage to them. Maybe that you broke their kneecap, so they have this penalty to something. So basically, you need to heal back the damage that was inflicted on that strike in order to, naturally, in order for it to go away. So the wounded kneecap and associated speed penalty heals when the character has recovered 4 hit points, because that is how much extra damage was inflicted by the strike. It's a really neat little way to do it. Ability score loss except for luck heals at the same rate, 1 point with a good night's rest and 2 points with a day of bed rest, full day. You can do both on the same night. Luck does not heal. Saving throws, morale. Morale checks are an important part of the game. They should be an important part of every game. So morale checks are a D20 on this. I don't really like that. I like the 2D6. But it's a D20, add the will save, higher, 11 or higher is a success. They can keep going on a 10 or less. They failed it, and they are going to run. I usually just use a 2D6 because I'm kind of caught in on that. All right, so 2 weapon attacks. This is whenever you are trying to dual wield. So if you have an 8 or less agility, if you have a 15 or less agility, you cannot score a crit while you're using 2-weapon fighting. So you need to have a 16 or higher. So even if you have a 16 or higher, you use a D16 to strike for your first one and a D16 for your second one. Only if you have an 18 or higher do you get to use your normal die for your first hit and then a D16 for your second hit. The Halfling is probably the only one who can, supersede that. Burning Luck. I already talked about that. 2-weapon fighting. Okay, that just explains the chart that I just explained. Withdrawal. So there is opportunity attacks. You get a free attack. So it's just kind of like, oh, they withdraw, swing. They withdraw, swing. That kind of thing. All right, catching fire, all those kinds of things. Those are really meh. All right, turn unholy. So this is the chart for turn unholy. If you're familiar with the turn undead chart, it is basically familiar to you. One thing that's pretty neat is that there is this holy smite thing instead of like it used to be, and a lot of times like turn and then there's like dead. So like you just hurt them or whatever or kill them outright. So like if you roll up to a certain point, you get to do the smitey smite. So a 24 or higher, you are doing a smite along with the turn. So 1d3 damage, a beam at 60 feet, and then it goes all the way up to a cone of 1d6 damage. And it also can kill. So as you can see, kill 1d8 plus class level of 1 hit die characters. So you can just, my cleric in my game has been using turn unholy massively lately, and he is reaping the benefits. Spell duels, I'm going to do a whole video on spell duels just because it's a really badass thing. So I'm not going to do that here. But spell duels are awesome in this game. And you should steal that idea. See, it's a few pages of rules. That just tells you how awesome it is. Okay, magic. So this is a really big section, and I'm going to go through it really quickly because of the fact that it is... you just kind of need to understand the idea. So there are some spells that have concentration where you can, while you're concentrating, you can take no action beyond walking at half speed. Combat damage, a fall, or other significant interruptions require that you make a will save against DC 11 or lose concentration. But for the most part, you don't have to worry about that. It's only very certain spells. A spell check with a natural 20 is a critical success. You receive an additional bonus to your check equal to your caster level. So let's say your caster level 4, you roll a nat 20, you rolled a 24, and you also add your intelligence bonus and caster level on top of it. So pretty fucking sweet. So spell checks by other classes. A character from an untrained class rolls a 1d10 for your spell check instead of a d20. So as you can tell, they really can't succeed. They can't succeed. It's fucking impossible unless they burn luck. That is the only way. You'd have to roll like a 10 and then burn 5 points of luck in order to get a 15 on your spell check in order to get something worthwhile. So just don't bother. Just don't bother. Reversing spells, some spells can be reversed. So you can reverse enlarged for shrink, mending for tear, that kind of thing. You can't reverse spells at will. You have to learn them either one way or the other. Spell burn. So spell burn I already explained. But one thing that's interesting to know, you get an automatic crit if you sacrifice a full 20 points of ability scores in one fell swoop. It's a natural 20. That's your oh shit button, basically. It is pretty fucking sweet. Okay. Failing spell burn. So you get corruption if you roll a nat 1 and you're trying to spell burn. It's pretty bad. All right. So this is just a chart of things that you might do whenever you are using spell burn, and it's for flavor. It's really cool stuff, but it's for flavor. So don't worry about it. Regaining spells. Let's say you lose a spell. Then you can basically try and get them back by using Spellburn, I believe. Otherwise, you get them on the next day. Oh, well, actually, they tried to break it into white magic and black magic, like Fafhrd in the Grey Mouser. They were regained within a day of being lost. I've just been like, oh, it's next day. But whatever, you can. There are different ways you can do that. I didn't know that, so I don't know how I missed that part. I think it's just kind of like a smaller section I didn't really pay attention to. All right, Mercurial Magic, dude, Mercurial Magic. All right, so this is anytime that a wizard learns a new spell, they are supposed to roll on this table. And every time that they cast a spell in the future, this effect happens whenever they cast it. So this is a very interesting concept that is also very crazy. Like, it makes magic wacky and, in a way that some people don't like, but I love it. So far, we've been using it. I did allow my wizard to drop one of the effects because, like, whenever he rolled up his first set of spells, like, only one of them didn't have something horrible happen whenever he cast it. And it was probably the least useful spell. All of his good stuff had like nothing but bad things. Like, there was one where he would lose fingers every time he cast a spell, and it could, like, the fingers could never be returned, or like they're magically gone. And then once he runs out of fingers, like, he can't cast that spell ever again. So yeah, it's interesting. The things range, like, here is Aura of Decay. So if you roll a 37 on this, every time you cast this spell in the future, here's what it does. The spell drains the physical form of all material of a certain type within 20 feet of the caster, causing it to age quickly. Roll 1d6. So this determines what kind of thing is affected. So it could be metal tarnishes and spots of rust appear on it. Wood dries out, becoming brittle and cracked. Stone becomes smooth and worn, with small cracks appearing on it. Fabrics and leathers fray and tear. Food and drink spoils. Flesh ages, and all creatures within the effect age 1 year. Or like, it's bad. It's bad. You want to use that around people you hate. But the higher you roll, the better the shit gets. Well, usually. Sometimes it's still just bad. This is one that the wizard got with Chill Touch, which is really good. Casting the spell imbues the caster and those around him with beneficial energies. All within 15 feet of the caster, both friend and foe, are healed for 1d6 points of damage for every level of the spell. So basically, he can cast Chill Touch while he's near his friends. It will heal him and everyone around him, and then he runs in and uses the spell to do the damage after, like, on the next round. So it's pretty cool. All right. There are a lot of really neat ones. Somebody else got this one, Natural Born Talent. Instead of rolling normal spell check, you roll a die improved by 2 steps on the die chain. So you can roll a d30 for your spell check instead of a d20. So yeah, I mean, it's a really cool thing. Mixed reactions from people, though. Some people hate it, some people love it. I appreciate it, but I can see how frustrating that could be for a wizard player character. Corruption. So minor corruption. So basically, corruption is a thing that can happen whenever you fail, like do a critical failure on a spell check. And it can be pretty ugly. Like, here's one for major corruption. Body feeds on its own mass. You lose 2d10 pounds in 1 month and suffer a -1 penalty to stamina. So it's pretty serious. Character's height changes by 1d20 -10 inches. There's no change in weight. The character's body grows thin and tall or short and fat. um, Small horns grow on their forehead. You know, so it's kind of like if you've played Fable, whenever you're evil, you know, like it's kind of like that. So this is actually a portrait meant to show the process of playing a wizard. You know, you're like, oh, this, you know, kind of lovely looking individual here. And then the more you go on, the more fucked up you look. You got, you know, insects crawling on you, you know, your eyes bulging out. You look like 1,000 years old, all that kind of stuff. Greater corruption, even serious stuff. Character grows a tail over 1d7 days. It could be a scorpion tail that can attack, a scaly snake tail, a forked demon tail. So yeah, I mean, like, it makes you all fucked up, and it's not even all bad things. Some of it is useful. Generic spell Misfire. That is for, like, if there's a misfire and you just want like a general table to use. Deity disapproval. So remember, whenever you roll disapproval on a cleric's spell check, this is the chart that they roll on to determine what happens. So on the lowest end, you must atone for your sins. You must do nothing but utter chants and intonations for the next 10 minutes, starting as soon as you're able. So you can wait until the end of combat if you need to. It just means you have to waste a turn. So it's not too awful. Let's look at the top end. Your ability to lay on hands is restricted. The ability only works once per day per creature healed. No single character can heal more than once per day. After 24 hours, the ability reverts to normal. There's all kinds of things in between. Your deity wishes to test whether you are a man of faith or a man of the flesh. Calculate the cleric's total net worth in gold pieces. The cleric immediately incurs a permanent -4 penalty to all spell checks. The only way to remove this penalty is for the cleric to sacrifice the material possessions. For every 10% of net worth, 1 point of the penalty is removed. Sacrificing 40% of what you own returns you to normal. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. The Grimoire of the Wizard. It is going to go into some stuff here. So you know spells as indicated, you know, so the 4 spells at level 1, etc. You may come across more spells. You can steal another wizard's grimoire. Let's see, or something to that effect. If a wizard does not come across any spell choices determined randomly, you choose the level of spell you wish to learn is limited by max spell level. So basically, whenever you level up and you get a new spell, you can decide to pick one out of a grimoire that you have found, or something to that effect. Just because you find a description of how to cast a spell doesn't mean you can actually pull it off. Your character must make a check in order to learn the new spell to which you are exposed. Your judge will give you the criteria for the check. So it's up to you, Judge Aruni. Having a spell invoked by multiple wizards at once can improve its power. Only one wizard is the primary caster and contributes a spell check and die type to the casting. Each wizard past the first adds half their spell check bonus, including spell burn, to the collective spell checks. It's just, you know, like more stuff to make that shit interesting. All right, so this is the known spell list of the current era. So one thing that you'll notice is that there is a chart that you can roll on to determine what spells that you learn. So I very much appreciate that. Again, this game is not for power building. It's not for anything like that. You get, like, you know, you kind of get what you're given, and you got to do the best with it. All right, so here's your first look at what each spell looks like. So you get the level, you get the range, casting time, all that kind of stuff. So it'll give you a general description of what it's supposed to do. So for animal summoning, you summon animals, animal spirits. Well, you know, you just summon an animal. If you're familiar with, you must be familiar with the animal type and have some material remnant to expend in casting the spell, such as hair, fur, paw, tooth, skull, etc. I usually kind of roll waive that particular requirement as far as like having a material remnant. I may be a bastard for doing so, but all right. So next you see manifestation. So the first time that you cast a spell ever, you can roll on this to determine what it looks like whenever you cast it. So it could be an egg shimmers into existence and then hatches into the animal summoned. It could be a flash of dark clouds and then the animal appears. It could be the animal's skeleton appears first, then organs appear, then muscles knit them together, and skin grows, and the animal appears. So basically, this kind of makes your wizard's magic look different from other wizards. I love it. I fucking love it. It gives you a little bit of extra fluff there. All right, so here's a corruption chart. So this is what happens if you roll a nat 1 and you roll poorly on this 1d6 roll that you roll whenever you roll a nat 1. Well, so basically, if you roll a 4+, you have a 50% chance after you roll a nat 1 of just misfiring. You got a 50% chance of having corruption. So if you have corruption, you roll a 1d8 and you see what happens here. So like a 1, you take on a minor facial trait of the animal you attempted to summon, such as whiskers. So you can see already that like your wizard is going to be this fucked up thing. If you play long enough, like they're going to be fucked up. And it is glorious. Like it makes magic crazy. All right, now let's look at misfires. So this is just if you misfire. Misfire is you roll a nat 1 and then you roll 50%. It's the better determination after that shit. So a misfire, you inadvertently summon a swarm of aggravating insects such as bees, wasps, or locusts. So or you correctly summon an animal but incorrectly places it inside a nearby building or terrain feature. If there's no nearby feature, the animal dies instantly. Its body is difficult to recover now that it's been fused with the object. Yeah. So let's look at if you don't fail. So as you can see, this is a level 1 spell. You need to roll 12 or higher. That's usually how it goes. You need to roll 12 or higher in order to get an effect. So if you just pass, just barely pass it, then you get to summon one mundane animal with 1 hit die or less. They remain for 1 hour, though it hungers, thirsts, and rests as normal. It obeys your commands within normal bounds. It won't do suicidal stuff. Has a 50% chance. Asking it to do suicidal things has a 50% chance of releasing them from your service. And they go back to where they came from. Due to the nature of the summoning, you cannot directly harm the creature summoned. Now, that's the lowest result that you can get that actually casts. All right, let's look at the highest. So this is a 32 or up. So this is if you have a high caster level, you roll a nat 20, and you got a pretty decent intelligence modifier. The caster summons a large group of mundane animals. This could be a herd of cattle, a pride of lions, a flock of geese, a pack of wolves. They must all be of the same type, and the total hit dice must be 100 hit die or less. So you could have like 52 hit die creatures, which is insane. It is insane. The herd remains for a week, although they get hungry, thirst, and rest as normal. They obey your commands and even undertake suicidal commands or those contrary to their nature. You can get a rabbit to eat meat. Due to the nature of the summoning, the caster cannot directly harm the animals summoned. So, and then it goes on. It goes on. You have this for every spell in the game. It is wonderful. Now, when you're seeing this, you might be like, well, this is a lot to take care of whenever you're in the middle of the action. And yes, you're kind of right. However, what you do, and this makes it very easy, is whenever you learn a new spell, let's say I learned Enlarge. Okay, so then I write down page 139. So I write down page 139. So every time that I cast Enlarge, I know to turn to page 139. I've already got the manifestation because we've already done it the first time. Okay, so now let's say I roll a 15. All right. So then target increases in size by 25%, conferring a +1 bonus to attacks, damage, and AC to greater size due to greater size and strength. That's it. We're done. That is all. I know that, for a lot of people, they're like, yeah, but you got to turn the pages and all this kind of stuff. I mean, yes, but if you're like me, you keep a PDF up. You just, type in page number. So let's say I need to go to page number, 180. So I'm going to do 180, press enter. All right. So now the page number is a little bit different on the PDF. So then I'm like, okay. All right. And now we're at 180. There we are. It's really that easy. And there's even an app called the crawler app or something. It's by Purple Sorcerer. You can get it on Android. I don't know about iPhone, but and you can just tap the spell, tap what your result was on the roll, and it tells you what happens. It's nothing. And so you get to enjoy these crazy fucking spells. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I mean, I love this system so much. And the magic is a very strong reason. It's really almost everything about the system. There's not much that I would change. So we got tons and tons and tons and tons of spells. Tons of spells. All right. So then you get to the patrons. I'm not going to go into that here, but basically the patrons give you access to new spells. They have a whole thing about them, about their personality, what happens whenever you invoke them. What kind of traits you can get from trying to invoke them and then bad things happening. There's all kinds of stuff involved. So patrons are really cool in DCC. Really, really cool. You get unique spells. You get this whole new component of the game. And it is very fun. I very much appreciate the way that they treat patrons compared to how 5th edition does, where it's it's just, it's whatever. It's all up to the DM to make it very interesting or to ignore it and just make it where a warlock is just a really cool class, All right, so this gives you an idea of how they expect how many people in the world are going to be it gives you an idea of how common class levels are. So level 0, 95% of the population. So almost everybody is level 0. Level 1, 2 in every 100 people. So not very common at all. Not very common at all. You're an expert in your field. So automatically, that's pretty major. And, to be perfectly honest, it's a little silly when you think about it, because whenever you were your level 0, it took you 2 encounters, really 3 encounters to be expert in a field. It's kind of silly, but for world building purposes, this makes sense and it works. And then you go all the way up. So my characters in my current game are once in a generation type people. So 1 in 10,000. So they are very, very, very rare. Etc. So 10 plus an immortal or demigod no longer mortal. You get 2 or 3 per epoch. All right. So XP, this is how that system works. Luck. So I've already explained how all that stuff works. Luck changes. So this is basically you can get new, extra luck or less luck depending on certain things. Usually it's if you've done something really good, for your alignment or something like that. Or, you completed an adventure and you did really awesome things. You can get more luck. If you do something bad, you can lose it, that kind of thing. Magic items. So this goes into how rare they're supposed to be, which is pretty fucking rare. It says only 1 in 1,000 people can achieve level 3 in any class. Only a small number of them are wizards. So that lets you know how many people can create magic staffs. It's level 3 wizards can make them. using the second level spell Magic Staff. So a lot of this like basically gives you perspective on world building for this system to make everything kind of fit together. And it gives you an idea of how they look at the game. It's pretty cool stuff, I gotta say. So, and also like a +2 weapon. The creator must have been level 6 in order to make it. And that is a 1 in 50,000 type of person that could make that. So, all right, sword magic. Now, this is really cool. This is lately one of my favorite ways to create new magic swords. Basically, you use this table, and by the end of it, you have all these characteristics that make this sword interesting. It's pretty crazy. They get all kinds of really cool effects. They get like they have like a special purpose that it's good for. You know, it gets powers depending on what you roll. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. I love that particular aspect. This goes into scrolls, unique traits. Like, so, I mean, they use random tables for all kinds of fill in the blank type things that, so you mean, you get a lot of stuff out of this, even if you aren't even going to be using Dungeon Crawl Classics as a system, it gives you a lot. All right. So then you have, basically the monster versus a monster. So you have, this is the monster almanac or whatever, but it's like, you need to understand that, they're not all going to be like this. So there's going to be a variety. And it lets you roll up random monsters. As far as like their particular traits, it's very cool. They do that with undead. They do that with everything. All kinds of different categories. What happens when they die? I like what they say here. DCC has no such rules beyond the generalities of hit dice and dungeon levels. Let the characters learn when to charge, when to retreat, when to bide their time until they're powerful enough to win. If they don't learn, let them suffer the consequences. So it's really kind of a condemnation of the whole concept of balancing encounters. Monsters have their own crit charts, depending on what kind of monster they are. So it's very cool, very fun to use. You know, for instance, a devil, they roll a high crit. Their strike breaks the magic bonds holding it in this plane and confines the character to the demon's current location. The character sees a burning circle of flame appear around them, sputtering black and dark energy. It's considered powerful magic. They cannot pass through it by any means until it is dispelled or freed, until the character is freed or banished back to their native free state. The demon, on the other hand, is now freed from any confinement. So, like, there's just all kinds of shit here. All kinds of shit. It's, you know, it's fun. So they don't really have like a treasure section. Like, they gave you the magic items. Like, you know, things are not supposed to be predictable. So, there's not a treasure section. I'm sorry. You know, you might want a treasure section. You can pull it from another RPG. So here is like stat blocks. As you can see, the stat blocks are usually very short, just in old school variety. You don't need a whole lot. You just need like how much damage they do, what their attack's like, their AC, their hit die, how far they move, what their morale save is, what their saving throws are, and then like if they have any like special features, and then you're done. And then you have a description of them. And that's how it goes. And there are quite a few different types. Kind of running the gamut, but you know, not doing anything that is what's it called? Copyright infringement or anything like that. Some of them kind of approach. So dragons, they have a whole section on dragons, and you can roll up new dragons and, you know, like get their age, like how old they are determines how fucking tough they are and all this kind of stuff. It is really neat. Their dragon section is very useful. I would use it for any RPG where you have dragons. You got elementals, giants, ghouls, harpies, you know, basic shit. And if you pull from their adventure line, you're going to find even more. So, appendices. All right. So curses. This gives you an idea of how to make curses more interesting. The stronger the creature is that's inflicting the curse, the more serious the curse can be. There's like certain specific ways that you break them. It's not just by casting like a remove curse spell, which is ultimately kind of boring, you know, honestly. They have like specific requirements you have to do. This is the appendix on languages. Inspirational reading. It's an appendix in quite appropriately. So just things that they recommend that you read. And I think this is was that the original list? Yeah, that's the original list. Yeah, so you got Paul Anderson, you got Edgar Rice Burroughs, Lord Dunsany, H.P. Lovecraft, Michael Moorcock. Got Tolkien, of course. You got Jack Vance. Yeah. So those are books they recommend you read to get an understanding of kind of like how they get their influence. There's also a list of OSR blogs, and a lot of them are really good. Grognardia, has come back. Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I wonder if they wish they could take that one back. They have a pretty good spread of them. They got Jeff Rentz on there. So they got some forums. What did I just click? No, go back. You bastard. Did it save my page? It did not save my page. Okay. Appendices. What did I do? Okay. All right, so you have okay. OSR resources. Okay, yes, there's forms and all that stuff. Poisons. So they have rules for how poisons work. They're pretty good. Titles. This is sobriquets. Book of names. So basically, like, if you ever don't know what to name a thief, roll on here. Gug. Maybe you don't know what to call a fantastic creature. You got Hade or Hade. I don't know. Mindus, you know, all that kind of stuff. So just, you know, like neat stuff to pull from. Titles. So this is whenever we were talking about how like they have titles up to level 5, and then after that it's kind of up to you. So for a thief, it could be any number of things. It could be an informer, journeyman, juggler, junkman, killer. You know, it really doesn't matter. But it's just a neat little thing to have. Okay, so then you have they have some adventures. They always have Portal Under the Stars, as far as I know, is always something that they offer, which is a neat adventure. It's a level 0 funnel, so it's meant to kill a lot of characters. And then in this particular edition, they included the Infernal Crucible of Sezrekan the Mad. And that is for level 5 characters, 4 to 8 level 5 characters. A lot of their stuff is kind of built for a lot of characters. And it's very fucking deadly. So yeah, that is the book. So if you stuck around this long, holy shit. But now you might have an idea of what DCC has to offer. So, and truthfully, if you're interested in the system, like, and you want to use the system, obviously tons and tons and tons of value. But even if you don't want to use the system necessarily, but you want to mine it for ideas, a lot of the manifestations, a lot of the spells, the effects from the spells, a lot of the mechanics, a lot of the tables for dragons, for magic swords, for items, you know, all that kind of shit. It is pretty fucking useful. And, you know, like the PDF, I want to say you can get for less than $20. And you can get the soft cover of this massive fucking book for I got it for $25. This then you can get the hardcover for $40. So like, you know, holy shit, like just buy it. Holy, you know, like fuck you, just do it. That's it. This is a long ass video. So, like I said, it was mostly meant to be listened to. Have a good one.